Okay, enough of the warbling introduction. Here we go. Right, so we have credits and we have intention. Now, the trick about it is, it's how we relate. Okay, so it's the psychosocial twist. Okay, and I've written about it, and you know about it. It's to do with how our individual existence is related to other people's existence concurrently. Okay, it's all about concurrency. Now, the app does some aspects of this, okay, covers some aspects of this. And what we're doing is the future projection, okay, how we are hoping to achieve anything. Now, the mapping of it to a vector is okay, but it's how do we show projects? So if we've got a bunch of projects, okay, and there's like, 3 people going towards this, project P1. Okay, brilliant. Okay, they've got the intention to achieve this project. And then there's another one, P2. What's the relationship between P1 and P2? Okay, so this one might be we need to build the foundations before we build the roof. Okay, that would be an obvious dependency. Well, maybe not. We could actually build the roof and then put it on top of, well, we have to do that. We also have to do the walls. Okay, so then put the roof on. But you could actually build them all simultaneously. Not all simultaneously. You can't. No, again, you could probably build the timbers separately in the framework and then put that on top of the foundation when the foundation's dry, and the roof all on the same day. Okay, so it's possible. Do you see it? So it's how we. So imagine that we have this, which is the foundations. We have the roof, and we have. Okay, let's do the roof as number 3. Wow, that's an S. And let's go for P2, which is the walls. Okay. Now, traditional method would be, well, you do P1, you do P2, you build the foundations, you build the walls on top of the foundations, and then you build the roof on top. Of course, that's great, right. But what they've worked out, Elon Musk and various other people, is that you can actually do them all simultaneously. P1, P2, P3, modular. You design them in that way, and then you just put them together all in one day. P4. Okay. P4 is this sequence. Okay. But if we do P1, P2, P3, put it all together in one day, it means that you don't have this length of period. So you only start doing the roof once you've done this. So you get this linear. And so that's why a lot of systems that we've developed over the years, most of the early ones, basically, they're all linear. You have to wait till something happens, and then once that happens, then you do the next thing. And it's common in math, it's common in teaching. Well, once you learn this, then we'll do this next bit, and then you do the next bit, and then the next bit, and it goes on for years, all right? Terribly tedious. Whereas I was doing this in classrooms. I was doing this, and the equivalent of this is algebra. So if you keep this in mind, if you know this, and you're thinking about that, you put all those simultaneously together, and you get algebra. Okay, so I'm creating a website called lessons.com, and it's all about, it's less than 3 lessons. Okay, oh, you can't see that. Less than 3. Can you see that? Yeah, less than 3. I love lessons. It's less than or equal to, actually. Less than or equal to 3 lessons. Okay, and if you do it less than or equal to 3 lessons in algebra and Tango and various other things that I've done, that's how we're doing it, all right? And we're kind of doing a similar thing with Sqale, all right? We've got a couple of simple mathematical things that relate to our psychosocial engagements, and if you do them all simultaneously, we have a completely alternative world. And all we do is you start interacting with each other, and we start creating this alternative world just amongst ourselves. And if we do it across Sqale, the world changes. It's not particularly tricky. Using this method, okay, because it's about simultaneity. It's about you listening simultaneously as I'm talking, okay, as an example. So instead of thinking I'm relaying information to you, you're actually assembling things that are already in your head. You already exist. You already do things, and it's to do with how we're doing them. Okay, so The idea of a sequence. A lot of, for example, recipes. Again, we'll do this, that, and the next thing. But actually, if you look at recipes, sometimes it says, for example, you do this, and then you lay it to the side, and then you start doing this. And so while that is soaking, or boiling, or whatever, we're getting onto this, chopping something else up, and then we're doing something else. But actually, that's been going on at the same time. Okay, and they all generally come together. Okay, and that's the final meal. Okay, so actually it looks like you're doing a recipe sequentially, but actually there's quite a lot of simultaneous processes going on. We know this, all right? If you're a cook, following anything, you know this, all right? And we all know this. We all cook. We all do a bit of food cooking, right? So that's what we're trying to work out, okay? So another thing is to think about recipes. So when I'm talking about this, it might sound a bit abstract, but if you kind of go back to things that you actually already know and think about, well, how do I do recipes? How do I food? How do I eat? Any process, absolutely any process you can think about in this kind of idea of sequentially or simultaneously. Now, what we're doing is we're applying that to us socially, collectively. So think about your own processes and how you do anything and how we're doing anything collectively. And that's what we're playing around with the project system. Now, so I'm wanting that rather than just explain the thing, it's where I am right now with this. How do we sequence this? Now, there's one way of doing it, which we haven't got yet because it involves the governance system. And it's relative to the projects. So we've got project 1, 2, and 3, and we're saying, right, what's the order for this? And what we do is we look at P1, and the people that are involved in P1 decide collectively or by whatever settings, okay? And that's what the governance module is. So for example, and that we haven't coded that yet, that'll take a little bit of time. So we can't do this, but I'll share with you the method by which that will happen. So for example, on a card right now, if you want to edit it, and you're an editor, you can. So if you want to change the title, and you have editing facility, you're one of the authors, you go ahead and you change the title, boom, it's done. And another person, if there's 3 people that have editing capacity on a card, any one of them can change at any moment. Okay. However, the governance module allows a whole bunch of different settings. That one would be the setting is 1. Okay, a individual person has the authority to change the title or any other aspect of the project or the card. However, it might say, you could have a setting where it says it needs everybody. Okay, everybody. So if it's 3 people, it requires all 3 people to agree, by consensus, that it can change. So one person changes the title, and then it waits for the other 2 to agree, and then it happens. Okay. Or another one, it says, 2 people or 3 people. So if more people join and become more authors, if it was everybody, it would increase as more people join. But if it was 3, it would be fixed at 3. It doesn't matter how many other authors. It requires a minimum of 3, or it requires a percentage, 20%, 50%, or it's based on SQ. Okay, so that's the governance module. It's all to do with being able to define it so that it requires only one person. That's only an individually named person. That means it's one person's in control, like a tyranny, and they're in charge of that. Okay, that's the only person. Other people can ask them, can you change the title? And so only that person can affect the change. All right? So a whole range, all right, from despot, tyranny, individual in control, to complete consensus, and everything in between. Democracy, weighted democracy, absolutely everything. Very simple module. We've defined it. It's got only about 3-4 different kind of conditions. Easy, kind of, all right? But we haven't done it. We haven't coded that, and that'll take about a month. All right. Now, if we had that method, all right, it means that, for example, if it was just one individual, specifically named individual, that one individual could say, right, this project is going to go before this one. It's not going to be simultaneous. It's not going to be this arrangement. It's going to be this arrangement. So they are defining that, and they're saying this one is before that one, and they define it. So with that method of governance, the people that have got editorial control of each project decide on how that project fits to others. Given that if this person said this one's coming before this one, okay, then that one, the people that are in control of that one, which might be these individuals, but might be other people, then get kind of like the offer that this one is going to come before this one. And they, within their governance decision, just like the same governance with the titles would change, would go, oh, okay, yes, we agree, this one comes before this one. Okay, so these guys agree. And so therefore the people in charge of this one and the people in charge of this one individually in control of their projects, make a decision where they both align like that. Okay, and so this is a decisioning system based on the governance module of the people that are in charge of each of the projects. Got that? Okay, right. Now that means you can sequence it this way or sequence it that way or sequence it any way you want. But the important bit here is the decisioning of the governance module for each project. Okay, so we've got an aggregate little thing making decisions for itself collectively against other projects. Okay, as I say, that's dependent on having the governance module. Not actually it's necessary. Right now, it means with the current system, any one individual says, right, this one's after that one, and it sequences that way. And individuals do it themselves. But if another person changes it, no, it should be before P1, it should be before P3. The person who just changed it will change it. There's no governance to it. It's just each individual has the power to do it with our current system, without the governance module. Each person that has editorial control of a project would be able to do that. So they're making a decision for the whole project. Okay, but a good way to think about it is the governance module is for each of the projects. Everybody involved in the governance of that project is making a decision about how that project aligns to other projects, like this, or any other way, right? Now, the alternative, that's what we're exploring now, okay, on the YAB, is what happens if we can develop this, because we haven't done the governance system, and it's quite clunky, that method, and it relies on us making decisions, right? What happens if we could do this individually? What happens if one individual says, I want it to look like this. I'm a member of P1, P2, and P3, and I think it should be like this. And they align the projects like that individually. And another human being, maybe number 2, goes, no, I think it should be like this. And they align it like that. And we have that level of flexibility. When I'm thinking about it, when I'm talking about it, I just go, okay. And that's what the graph would show. It would show different ways that it is arranged. Okay. So it's kind of going, it will show like this, and it would also show like this, and it will show the number of people that are aligning like this and like that. So in effect, that line is an individual. Okay, so one individual is going, I'm looking at that to that, that to that. And so this is my timeline. Whereas another individual says, this would be my timeline, and I'm going to work at this. Okay, I'm going to work at this a bit, I'm going to work at the bit of this, and work simultaneously at different times, and at some point or other, they're going to all come together. Right. And this is given the fact, all right, that there are other people, other people doing these things, right? So, and the number, okay, and so what we're doing, the way that this would show in a graph, is that the numbers of lines would thicken that future projection. So if there was 100 people, okay, that thought we have to do it sequentially, they'd have aligned them individually together. So it would look like, wow, P1 definitely comes before P2, before P3. We haven't gone through individual, project-based decisioning. Nope. This is, I agree to, we need foundations. I agree we need to have some walls. And I agree that we have to, have a roof. I agree to each of those parts. I'm happy about this. Okay, we definitely need these things. Okay, there might be others that say, no, we don't need a roof. We need a tent. We don't need walls. We need a tent. And so they've got a completely different project going on. But for the people that have committed to this, how are we doing this? What's the arrangement of this? And a lot of individuals go like this. I think we should do it this way, because the argument, therefore, or the decisioning, is not based on the project. And that's the trick about it. It sounds good. Well, that sounds good. We just do this. It's tricky because the people deciding on this might not be the same people deciding on this. And therefore, the decisioning based on this, in relation to that, and the people making a decision for that project in relation to this, means that the decisions they make are relative to the project. Okay? They really only have control of their project making decision, whatever governance system they have. And they're different. And so the association between them gets tricky. And that's the big problem that we're facing in the world. Okay, we've got people in companies or governments or whatever it is, departments, and then they gather together and then they have to make a decision based on the body, the group, the project, whatever it is that they think they're grouped together as in relation to another. And that's why I want to explore this other way, because no, we're bypassing that. The individuals are making a decision for the collective. They're saying, we're allowing, if we're exploring this idea, any individual to go, right, well, I don't know, could be P3, P2, P1, and they come up with their different, every individual is allowed to strategize for all of us. Even though they might not be a member of a project. That's a bit tricky. Okay, right now you have to be a member of the project. However, using this method, it just allows us to strategize beyond the control parameters of the decisioning around an individual project, which means that it invites a kind of certain level of solution that I come up with. I come up with levels of solution. Everything that I've done is in this manner. Well, I think just this. I think this. Blah, blah, blah. And I've just got ideas about this, that, and the next thing. I don't actually have to take part in moving any of the projects forwards in a sense. Okay, I don't have to have ownership of it. And so, because I'm assuming that we're kind of all part of the whole world situation. So I feel as if I'm allowed to think about things and allowed to plan things, not restricted by the political governance module for any specific element. And that's what this allows us to do. It means it allows us to formulate our future and the orientation of our future projects. It doesn't matter who you are. And it allows everybody to effectively vote by, kind of putting it together. And then we'll, as I say, we'll have a map of the future. At any moment, we have a map of the future. Not based on decisions that are pending in any specific project. That will still be going on when we do the governance module. But what we're attempting to do is set up this method, because it's within our grasp to do, I think, which is it's just like a loose or a thin, but beautiful, powerful, a way to associate projects individually, personally. You just do it, and then other people see it, and they do it, and then we get a collective kind of view of how it can be done in the future. And then you just do whatever you want to do. If you like it this way, you like it this way, fine. So I'm going to work on this, okay? And a lot of people will go intensively work on this and not work on P2. But if somebody's following this model, some people will be doing P2 and some people will be doing P3. Okay, but this one, nobody's going to be doing P2, nobody's going to be doing P3. And in the real world, that is what's happening. Some people are exclusively working on something that they've said this has to happen first before next. In any group, company, anything, okay? And yet there'll be other people in that group, company, whatever, going, or a separate company or separate organization, whatever, going, I think we should be doing this. I think we should be doing this, not that. And so we have this simultaneous, and so that's why it reflects our current psychosocial happening. Okay, that's why this system will be powerful, because it doesn't show how it's all going to fit together. It shows the possibilities of how it fits together. With enough commitment that people are going, I'm committed to P1 or 2 or 3, whatever it is. So we've got the commitment to the projects, i.e. the objectives, but how we go about it and the sequence of them, we've got some flexibility. Okay, and that's played out in reality. So while these guys, a lot of people are just piling into P1, oh, we have to do P1 before we do P2. If some people go, no, I think we can do it right, and they get enough of validation, okay, and they build the walls or part of the roof, and then the people, the next day happens the next day, and these guys are like, I'm bored doing the foundation, Jesus Christ, I've had some ideas about the roof, but because they're doing it this method, they're not allowed to. But they start seeing what these guys are doing, and they go, well, I'll just spend a little bit of time doing that, and they take a little bit apart to do that, okay, and then this one starts to materialize, and over time, this one devolves into this one in reality, okay? Because remember, all of this is just a future projection. It's just an imaginary thing. And because we've got this variability, and we can see the kind of variability, for sometimes it'll just be very concretely like, that's everybody. Everybody wants to do that. There we go. We know what we're going to do. We're going to do this, then we're going to do that. Brilliant. Right. But other times we're going to be going, well, it's kind of like this, or maybe it's always like this. And everybody's going, oh, it's like this. And other people are like, no, I think it should be like this. And so you get this variability. And as we progress in reality, with actually the people that we work with, okay, one of those, two of those will, and the future projection will change as we go forwards, as it should. So the map changes every day as we go forwards, because our thinking about it and our intention and our values is like, 10. We definitely should be doing P1, 10 out of 10. And but then it's like, well, okay, 7, because I want to do a bit of this. I think that one's actually quite important. I think we should do the walls now. And so it reflects our current, because conditions change. And so that's what the project thing is. It's not a fixed thing that we're locked into. It's a variable thing. So it's a bit like Schrodinger's cat. Okay, we're looking at the different kind of versions of Schrodinger's cat. All right, is the cat alive? Is the cat dead? You know, are we doing P1? Are we doing P2? Are we doing P3? Well, a lot of people are doing P1, but there's a few people doing P2 and P3. Okay, right. And now there's more people doing P3. And okay, now we're phasing into this. All right, we're doing this. Oh, look, we finished it. Oh, this is possible. And in this way, we have a conversation of action, okay, through our individual association of projects in the future. So there's no governance, okay, so we're just going, and then it's our action as we go forwards. And the result of our action is reflected using this model, using the, on the graphs. And, right, okay, so that's enough blah, blah, blah. Right, so I think, all right, so that's associating projects according to the individual. Powerful. Now, to mention, now, in terms of the maths, and how do we show this? So I'm going to talk about the Sqale diagram. Have a look at the Sqale diagram. Okay, so it's a bit like this, because this is the easiest version of it. Okay, so you got two things supplying certain amount of, well, let's say energy, and some of it is going to this one, some of its habits going to that one, some of this is going to that one, some of it's going to that one, and then all of that's going to this one, all of that. And so it's showing, have a look at the data there, it's fairly obvious. And I thought that is quite a way to somehow or other show how projects and stuff, but it's to do with what are we mapping? Okay, I'm not going to go into it, have a look at it, get your head around it. But it's whether we're mapping, here's the basic measure. Okay, measures, the two measures we've got, credits, okay, or intent. Right now, we have both, okay? However, in terms of the credits towards future projects, it's support, and it happens immediately. So as soon as you support a project, I'm supporting that project, it's dissolved immediately to all the people that are trying to achieve that objective. And there's a little logic module, which I don't think is going to take long. It's going to take shorter time than governance. And what it does is you can aim your credits at a project, and it doesn't happen immediately, and it happens on a certain condition. So it's conditional logic on support, and so it could happen after a certain period of time. The money is released, credits are released or returned, or a certain number of amount of money. So once 10,000 credits are supported towards P2, then we can go ahead with P2. Okay. So it's a logic gate based on how much is collected, how many people, it could be the number of people, it could be how much at a period of time. And I think that's it. I think those are the three conditions. I think there's another one as well. But so there are various logic, it's called the logic for the conditional support. Okay? Now we could do that. Okay, it might be required for this graph solution. We don't know. But that, if we do that, it basically opens up a completely, big field of how the whole thing works. And I think we can maybe squeeze that in. Now that, therefore, the reason why that's interesting is because this is a finite amount. It's got a one-to-one relationship to money. And money, although it can be printed and invented, we are treating, and it is treated in the modern world, money as a finite quantity. Okay? So we're treating it in Sqale because we're doing a one-to-one relationship. So somebody puts in 10 quid and we give them whatever it is, 1,000 credits. It's a finite amount. And that finite amount is moved around. Okay? And it's like a thing. Even though it's a vector, it's kind of like a thing. Okay? It's one of the functions. And so therefore, the amount of credits that a person has, and the amount that person has, is the total amount of credits that are in the end. Because they don't disappear, right? They're just constantly kind of there. So it's a finite amount of something. Which means that the maths of this fit something like the Sqale diagram. Now I'm sharing this. This is where I am right now, currently. And so the basic unit is credits. And so that means that an individual might have, and so the graph for it, the individual one might have, we might get this kind of distribution where number 1 has got a lot of credits, 2 has only a few credits, and 3 has got a lot more credits, okay? And they're all going towards future objectives. So that person is putting some of it into this project, and so on and so forth, okay? And the point is, and how one project fits to another project, it's so, oh gosh, I don't know how to explain it right. So this is P1, okay, and if, for example, let's say 2 credits go into P1, but P1 leads into P2, okay, P2, okay, people are going directly into P2, but all the money that this guy hasn't put into P2, he says we have to do P1, which will feed into P2, okay, so the money or energy, whatever it is, that's going to P1 is the money that's going to go into P2. So this person doesn't have to invest directly into P2. He says, no, I have to do this before this. Okay, that's quite nice. Okay, so, and that might not be necessary. These people go, no, that's not necessary. That's why they're funding P2 directly. Okay, but this guy, no, this is necessary before P2 happens. So you're voting with your money. Okay, so that's kind of really close to how it works. And it actually doesn't mean that you have to move money. It's basically like intention. And I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but basically this guy's saying, with the intention that I've got, I'm saying my intention is we need this before this. That's the argument, that's the proposal it's putting. And it's having an argument with 2 and 3 about, oh no, should it be this, should it be that? It's just like, I don't care what you guys are saying. Kind of. The people do care. It's just, these guys are saying their vote is, some of my attention, effort, whatever it is, P2, this guy's saying P2, whatever else it's doing, they don't think P1 is important. This guy's saying, no, P1 is important before P2. And so the money directed towards that will feed into this, which will feed into something else, And that means that the 2 credits, whatever, going to P1 is the intention to achieve this, to help achieve this, which will then achieve that, which will blah, blah, blah. And so therefore, it's more just like an intention. And that intention is mapped through this sequencing of projects. Does that make sense? So there's no money going through that. Okay, so it's just intention. Because remember, these are future projects. Once that's done, what could happen is that money is released back to this guy, and then those credits, the 2 of them, go to P2. Now that P1 has been done in the real world, and P2, they go, oh, we have to do this thing. Oh, look, we're missing something. The guys, no, I've already done it. I've already made P1. You see, that's why I put the money in. I had the intention to make it, and I did it before we got to P2. Okay? The point is, it's not an additional piece of money. Like I'm trying to indicate that it's all future projection, all right? So, and the point about that is that the thickness of a project is the number of credits. Okay, which kind of fits like a budget, the notion of a budget. That a big project in the future, the Olympics, That's a huge amount of money. Building a huge building, you know, that's a huge amount of money. Okay, well, that's what we have now. And that's what we have. That's how it works right now. You know, we have some money, we have a bunch of people, and we're paying people to do things. At some point or other, we have this building created. Okay, it's all intention. We have a map, a graph of the building, we have blueprints, and after, you know, a few months, we have a house. Okay, and it's to do with that intention, working together, and there it is. Bunch of projects in the way, and here we have a house. And the money is just kind of a funny little thing, trick kind of how we do it. And because we're using money as credits, as a vector, we don't actually have to move money. We can just point it. And that's what the future projection is. We're just pointing towards. And all this stuff is like a discussion. It's like in fact, it's like a blueprint, okay, that is constantly being updated and evolved as we progress forwards. Right. It's always like a sandbox or a mirror reflection. Right. Now that's one way of doing it. Okay, that means that the thickness, this, depends on credits. Okay, got it? Now I think that's possible. Okay, I think that's possible, it's doable, based on credits. I think the sand key diagram can work for it. Whatever it is that we do in terms of the deciding. Now, and this one's good because the individual is making a decision. Okay, I'm going to put some credits towards this. I'm going to put some, and so it's the credit allocation. Now, this individual has put the credits into this. How has he associated this? Okay, and again, so that means it requires this individual to say, I think this comes before this. And so the individual does that. But by doing that, you know, the logic of that, yeah, I think so. I don't know, you see, it's getting tricky. Okay, let's flip over to the intention, because that's what a lot of this mapping is. The intention is, and the plan is P1 before P2, and so on and so forth. Okay, but the intention is like, is it fungible? No, is it fungible? It means that there's an infinite amount of intent, kind of. There's if you have one credit, you can say, well, I can only put it in P1 or P2. Okay, this guy said, I'm going to put it in P2. It's a finite amount. And that finite amount has a direct relation, it's a social thing. So my credit and your credit, they're the same. Okay. And that means that when I have 10 of them and you only have 4 of them, it means that I have more power, you have less power. Right? Whereas if we do intent, whatever intent I have, whatever intent you have, is the total of your intent. Okay. And I think that means that we're equal. Okay, so whatever intent I have for the future is equivalent to whatever intents you have for the future. We're kind of equal, right? Some of us have more power about achieving it and so on and so forth, but it's like, I think it's normalized to 1, okay? So it's a bit like the gratitude tracking, the SQ, where it's normalized to 1, okay? You've got a finite existence, and that's one individual, you and me, and then we just thank people. Now, when I thank somebody 10 and another person 10, that's equivalent to somebody else thanking somebody 1,000,000 and another person 1,000,000. Okay, it's basically half-half. It's half of my intent goes towards one person, half of mine to the other. Same with the other person. And numbers don't matter. It's normalized down to 1. Okay. Similarly with intent, I think, which means that you don't get this. Okay, person 1 is not bigger than another, so you get. Can we see this? We get more like this. Okay, we get individual intent. Okay, so half of my intent is going towards P1 and half of my intent is going to P2. Okay, and we've all got finite amounts of intent. But then this graph starts becoming like, it's not too bad. So that means a project consists of, and that can be bigger and smaller in terms of intent. That's kind of cool. Cool. All right. So P2, if we had another person here, puts all their intent into P2. Okay, does that make sense? So, P2 becomes intention. Of course, there's a correlation. between credits, okay, our future objectives, and our intention. That's what I'm saying. It's continuous. There is a relationship between these two. That relationship is the tricky bit. That's the twist. Okay, it's a bit like the relationship of the individual to the collective and the psychosocial twist concurrently in time, even literally while you're listening to this. And that kind of, okay, is that guy talking to me? Or am I thinking the things that I'm thinking? Yes, I am. And what's the relationship between us? Okay, that psychosocial kind of twist between the individual and the collective. Okay, concurrently. So there is a relationship between this thing, which represents the credits and money, kind of represents a collective. Gosh, this is quite nice. It represents a collective. So my credit is the same as your credit. So it's relative to this. Okay, so this vector is relative to. This is like a social. It's a social product. It's like it's a social measure. Okay, this is a social measure. Social measure. Okay, a unit. This is a social unit, whereas this is an individual. It's related to the individual. Okay, do you see how tricky this is? So the credit is something, so my credit is the same as your credit. Therefore it's a social product. Okay, so it's a product. Okay, whereas this, my intention towards something, 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, it's not a product. Okay, my intentionality of 3 towards a project is different from yours. Okay, because your evaluation of 3, you know, the highest you might give any project is 5, you know. And so it's a relative thing. And also I might have like intentionality to many projects, okay? And some other people are just like, no, I've just got intention for one project. Oh, okay, that's all they're doing. They're really just doing the one project. And so therefore, you know, the intention, if somebody says 10 out of 10 for a project, and I go, oh yeah, I've got 3 projects, 10 out of 10. Therefore, what that number means is relative to the individual. So it's relative. This is kind of, I wouldn't call it absolute, but it's a bit like that. It's a bit like a clock. So when we say that, if we say something is going to happen by a certain date or a time, that is an absolute, external, objective, absolute kind of time reference, external to our individual. Whereas this intention is more like, well, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. Well, it depends when now is. Okay, so it's relative. Okay. So similarly, when we're doing the project, it's whether, if we say, for example, we need, so an absolute way of defining, and this is, we definitely have to do this, is right now what we're doing is we're doing absolute timing, and so our future becomes all locked in. That's our current shitty system. Whereas with this method, you say, for example, we need to have this. This is time, all right? We need to make sure that that roof is done before the end of September. Because that's when the storms all start. We need it finished then, okay? Or there'll be another one that says, well, we have to start this at a certain point. And so there'll be different parts of different projects that are defined absolutely. We have to do, we have to start it at this day because that's when we get the wood or something. I don't know, all right? And we're careful about that. And the other way of doing it is relative, okay? Relative to it. This one's going to happen before then. Doesn't matter when, as long as it's before. And so you can do calculations based on the relative definition of a project in relation to another project. Yeah. So, you know, we're going to eat, you know, next Friday. Well, at some point before Friday, I have to buy the food. Okay. Now it doesn't matter when. It can happen Thursday, Tuesday, whatever. Now if we say, it has to happen on Tuesday, why? Because that's when the car goes to the shop. So I have to, you know, kind of booking the time. All right. So if you've got a whole bunch of dependencies, projects, and some of them are set by absolute time, it kind of creates, it's a bit like water and ice, and it kind of creates a structure that is fixed, as anything is fixed in the future, okay? And most of what I'm saying is most of what we do is actually flexible and relative, okay? And so I call that soft, this is soft dependency, soft dependency. This is a hard, okay? So the hard dependency, this is hard. Okay, hard absolute product unit, the credit, your credit's all the same. Okay, so it's a bit like a clock. We're all referring to the same reference, external social reference of time, in this case the social reference of credits. And this one, however, is relative. So it's a bit like the before this, after that, relative to another thing, me, and so on and so forth. And so intention and anything to do with values is definitely within this reference frame. Okay, and so that's why it comes down to the relationship between collective and individual, that psychosocial kind of like mechanism. In our app, we have these two different methods of measurement, these two basic fundamental numbers. One is credits, and the other one is value. Okay, and this one is related to a future project. Okay, as opposed to the rating, remember, as opposed to the thanks towards another person, right? This is a future, so it has the closest correlation between, oh look, this intention towards a future project is very much like credits. Okay, it's a number relating to time. So remember, that's how we got credits. We say money is this funny thing to do with social movement, and we're doing a one-to-one relationship, and we've got this credits idea, and we're mapping it as a vector, but we're not trying to exchange, we're doing it to share, right? All that kind of background stuff. But it has a correlation, and it's literally this one. Okay, and all the thing. It's not to do with the sharing of things, it's not to do with the gratitude tracking. It's literally I'm hoping to do this and some kind of intention, and here's some money to make it happen. Okay. So this is the touch point. This is like the internal. This is where they phase. Okay, wherever these two numbers are in our psychosocial dynamics and wherever plays out, it comes down to how these two align. And that's why it's really important. And that's why it's taking me years, years to approach this and see if I can map this. And this is another approach as we're trying to do it. Loads and loads of other diagrams and things and blah, blah, blah. Useless, right. Not useless, just it takes a long time to catch this fish. And as you can see, this fish, it's a bit tricky. It's a bit tricky to catch, all right? So we've got this idea of intention relative to the individuals. So the individuals, so it's a bit of a mistake if we're going to use the sand key diagram to think about individuals, because everybody's got an equal amount. It's to do with the projects, okay? And then the projects will expand and reduce depending on the intentionality of the collective of individuals. It's kind of okay. However, if this person's putting all of it into P2, this P2 suddenly becomes like, oh, that's an important project. Well, that's only because that person's only got one project. And they're doing lots of other things in the world. The fact that they've only got this one project, but maybe they're not actually doing that much towards that project. So it's a bit misguided. It's not just one. Do you see? So it's a bit tricky to say every individual has one total intent. Well, it depends how much effort you're putting in. So it's tricky, and that's why you come up with this. The effort that people are putting collectively in is it has an external amount. We're comparing, do you see how we're comparing, your time and your effort with my time and my effort? And yes, it's relative to yourself, but it's also, some people are more effective than others. And somebody putting in all their time into doing something as opposed to somebody who's just putting in, a little bit of time. So it's too complicated. It's too complicated. My brain fries. And that's the trick. How do we simplify this down? And these are just the elements of it. Okay, that's it. We've just got this. We've got this. These are the two numbers that we have. Okay, and they're working. In the app. Yes, we have to maybe do this bit of coding, or we have to do the coding of the governance. But I think that's beyond our scope right now. We still have the cash for it. We might just have enough cash, or I might just have enough cash to do the logic for the support. And it's how these two come together. Okay. Now, with the notion of associating one project before another. This one's before that one, and it's after that one. Now, this one fits nicely the idea of the governance module. Okay, the governance module. So I'll put the The governance module, put in black, is we're making decisions within P1. We're making decisions for P2. Okay, these are the governance modules. Or we're doing it this method. Okay, so the governance modules, and we're deciding. This one, credits kind of fit into that. Although, actually, it's SQ. So, it shouldn't really be, the amount of vote and power you've got shouldn't be based on how many credits you put into it. Actually, maybe it should. For some people, settings should be. You know, and if you're putting more money towards something, you get more power. That's kind of the traditional method. I do have that. I've called it ownership, and it was just a percentage if you look at the governance module. But actually, maybe it should be based on how much credits you put into it. That's an interesting question. Okay, I'll just make a little thought about that. Okay, so percentage for credits. Come back to that. That's a little detail regarding the governance module. Maybe we have to have both of those. Exhausting. You see, so we get into levels of depth and detail. Remember, we're trying to cover every political and organizational method that we have. Okay. Now, we're obviously not going to manage that, and if we did, it would just be like people wouldn't understand it. We need a very basic minimal method that any child can do. Okay, and hence this idea of, oh, I think this, and I think that, and then they put it together and they make a decision, and then different people have different ideas, and then you try things, and then you see which one was right, and the people that thought it was this way, and that's what ended up doing. We go, okay, who are the people that set that up in the first place? You go, oh, that was pretty good, and so maybe for the next project, you kind of want to see what that person thinks. Okay, that's the idea. So we learn through iterative process of which of these linear or simultaneous at different projects. You know, if you're building a power plant, well, maybe not actually. But the point is, it's got a lot of hard, absolute time-like things. Whereas if you're doing something to do with learning algebra, I don't think, lessons, I think that's a crappy way of doing it. And so we know all about this, we want children to go at their own pace and all this kind of stuff. But trying to set it up in a classroom in a school doesn't work because the school systems are basically run like this in hierarchies. So unless, as I say, we have this economic to be able to enable it, a more fluid, flexible social organisation that can enable a more fluid, simultaneous, multiple different path avenue of journey for learning in schools. Okay, we're not going to have that happen unless we have the schools actually operating like this simultaneously. So, okay, but what we're saying here, we're saying, okay, so where are we going with this? We've got this. It's pretty simple. We're just saying we'd like a way for the projects to be put together. And remember, all of this, blah, 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 and we've got a phone. Okay, and the current UI we've got, which is not particularly flexible. So we're looking just for, it's a very small thing. We're just looking for, I don't know where I can put this. We're looking for something that fits on a phone. Okay, with the current UI, okay, with the UI that we've got currently. It's a graph though, okay, so we have lists, but we're going to create one graph. One graph. Okay, that shows this. Which elements of this do we show so that somebody says this, and they go, okay, I know what I'm doing. And really it has to be as simple as a timeline. Okay, so it shows the individual timeline. This, I'm doing these three things, I'm doing that, I think this one happens after that. That's it, right? I'm happy with my timeline and it shows my future. And then you hit another button and then you see everybody else's. Okay, so it's a bit like the sand key. And there's one that's got a nice thing where if you tap on one, you can see its consequence. It's a bit like that. You can see the consequence of one, and that's the idea. So you see yourself and your timeline, which should reflect your own I've got a few projects. You know, I'm interested in that one. I'm interested in that one. Oh, and this one I think is after that one. And I think this one's after that one. And I think so I have to do this one now. You know, of the few that I've got, some of them are in the future. These ones are kind of now. What am I going to do today? I'm going to do this one. Okay. And so you've got this. Do you see what I was doing there? Time. Okay, and that's all on a screen. So we're representing this temporal thing ahead of us in the future. Okay, on a screen. So I can see I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, but this one's over there, but I'm going to do that now. Okay, and so it's got kind of linear. It's fairly simple, individual. I think we have to do the to do. Okay, do now. So this is one of them. What did I call that? The logic. The support conditional support logic. Okay, we need to do that. We need to do the governance module, which we will not do. Okay, we will not do that. We could do this. And what did I just say? What's the other bit that we're going to do? Oh, I just forgot it. Rewind. You can rewind. I can't. It's fresh in your mind. It's not in mine. It's just popped out. So we're looking at the individual's path forwards, and then you hit the button, and then you can see the collective. And it's this idea of sequentially. Damn. I may have to rewind that or just give up doing this now if I can't remind myself. So you can see the sequence, and you can see before and after. And I think it's relative to the individual. If we do the governance module, it'll be we're making the decision for that. It becomes more fixed. It's a bit heavier. We like this. It's like the light way of doing it. I think this is within our reach. Okay, it's being able to associate the different projects one before another, or by defining it by a time. And this soft dependency. We're wanting this soft dependency. So you can to do now. That's it. Thank you. Do now. Soft dependency. That's actually before after. We need to do that. That's definitely doable. Maybe we should put a block there right now. And I've done it again. I've just said it and then forgotten it. Right. Oh yeah, do now. Do. Can you see that? No, you can't. Okay. Do now. Of all the projects that you can see, you know, some of them may be more in the future. You can hit the do now button. And it kind of creates a little project, so it's kind of more like the history. So you don't have to like think of everything that you're going to do, you know, because it starts turning into craziness. Like, you know, before I go in to do this office to sign, you know, the thing to sell something for the billions, I've got to get to the office. And before I get to the office, I've got to get to my car. Before I get to the car, I've got to leave my house. Before I leave my house, I've got to, you know, put on clothes. Before I put on clothes, I've got to get out of bed. That kind of craziness. So you don't have, so what you just do is to do now. So you get a certain level of resolution that you go, good enough, okay? And then you've got enough flexibility between whatever it is that you're going to do and now, and you just do it because there are so many different things you have to do before you turn up in the office and sign that thing, okay? So the do now is between what it is that you're actually concurrently in existence now, and you hit the do now button, and whatever the project is an objective in the future. Okay, so effectively you look at a project and you say do now, and if you complete and you finish and that project's finished, then you've done the project. But if it's not that project, it creates a little sub-project before it in the past, and that project is still to be done, but at least you've done a part of it. Yeah, does that make sense? So it does a little, it's like a sub-project, but we don't have to create it in the future. We just make it, oh, there it is, it's done. I finished P1, P2. So it's like saying, I create P2. I want to do P2, great, and I'll do it now. and then the act of doing now is P1. Does that make sense? So you don't have to put it into the future, because the time to take to find, I've got to get up in the morning, I've got to put my clothes on, do a checklist, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you've missed the meeting. It's time to check. Okay. So we can't do this, and we're doing this quite a lot with our time. We're putting a lot of stuff ahead of us, and it just takes way too long. And what we're saying is the do now button basically says, we just have to have things in the future that are actually like tomorrow or the next day, beyond our capacity. What we're going to do today, what can I do now? Okay, so we kind of release ourselves and give ourselves a bit more faith and trust in ourselves now and doing stuff. And it basically gives us the interface between, as I say, actuality, us now, and whatever it is that we think we're doing. Okay? So, the do now button is useful. Right. So the idea is you see a list, you see the things that you're doing. You can see a list, all right? But we're showing a graphic, okay? The list should be, okay, I'm going to do that one now. There, now, you do it, switch off, done, all right? It's either completed it or it's part of it, fine. And you'll do more of it tomorrow, fine. That's quite a powerful function, which sadly I don't think we've got money to do, all right? But that's a powerful function, but it definitely fits into all this. You might look at a project, and this is what we're looking at, the graph of it, and you hit the project and you go, right, the before or after. It's before this one, it's after that one. And we have to have some interface to be able to show the befores and afters, and the effect is this graphic, okay? And you see the individual view, and then the collective. Okay, so you see your thing to go, okay, that's my future, and I can see what I'm doing. Yep, that's what I'm doing. I know that's what I'm doing. These are the things I'm interested in, and some of these things, right, that's great. It's reflecting my reality. And then you hit the button, and you see everybody else's reflected individual reality, and then you see effectively the collective. So you see your individual path amidst everybody else's path into the future. That's what we're producing. Okay, that's basically it. I mean, I've set up the basic parameters. It's these parameters. Okay, we're looking for the graph, all right, of this. It's either going to be credits, maybe intent. Those are the numbers that we've got. The different projects, possibly before and afters, the soft dependency. I think so. We might not be able to do that. Might just stick to governance, and then the governance does it in a much more fixed way. Conditional support logic. Do know about it. Right. But basically, library. We're all limited. It doesn't matter what we're thinking here. Is what has already exists, like the Sankey diagram, that we can. I got the wrong word before. It's not appropriate. We can appropriate for our purposes. Appropriate the Sankey diagram to show projects. Okay. There are some other options, but that's one of them. Have a look at the other options, because we're up to an hour now. So, yeah, so if this makes any sense to you. Now, the whole point about this, and I didn't mention it actually. Oh, Christ, doing it at the end. Oh, God. We have to record the beginning one. All right, intentionality. I'll do a quick little invitation, all right? It's all to do with murmuration. What we're simulating here is future intention, like murmuration from birds. I didn't mention that. Right, okay, thanks very much. Here we are. If you find this interesting, join me. If you think you know anybody that can actually contribute to this, great. If you want to put some money into this, even better. We can actually make this happen. We can explore different methods of doing it. We could try different things out if we had enough money. We'll learn what's the best method to show us, to help us do and achieve things that are, quite frankly, with our current methods and models and ways of thinking, are impossible. Okay, be well.